Good morning, everyone, and welcome to Exploring the Paranormal. I'm Heather Leigh, and I am your host. Today, we have an exciting show. Those of you who know my guests and those of you who don't, you guys are going to absolutely love the questions we have and also the conversation. We were chatting just before going live, and we have a lot of things to talk about. So I'm not going to waste any time getting ready today. So we will cover all of our typical stuff, what's happening next week and everything at the end of the show. But let's welcome Rich to the show. Welcome, Rich. Thank you for joining us today. Oh,
Thank you for having me.
thank you. And I know a lot of people know who you are, especially if they've watched the Legion of Exorcists. But could you just kind of explain to everybody a little bit more about who you are and what you do?
My name is Rich Valdes, with an S at the end, not a Z. Been a paranormal investigator a lot longer than I have been a demonologist. I've been investigating the paranormal now for 39 years, not 39 weeks or months. And I've been a demonologist and studying through 3 different churches for 36, recognized by 2. Unfortunately, the first one, the pastor that was teaching me there and started teaching me for 2.5 years, passed away, and he wasn't able to finish. Then I moved on to another church. They finished my training and then recognized me. And then I also started working with Bishop Long back in 2010. And he finished my training, I'd say about, wow, that was a long time, 2015-ish. And I've been a resident demonologist for the United States Old Catholic Church, his church, since then. So been involved in a lot.
Yeah, and I know one thing I wanted to talk about. You had mentioned earlier that you were interested in the paranormal long before you became a demonologist because you...
You're freezing up.
Did I lose you? Is it me freezing? I am so
Yeah,
sorry. Can you...
it's all right.
Okay. No, I was just asking about your first experience. You had mentioned that you had an experience that got you interested in the paranormal.
Okay. The first experience I ever had that I recall was I was 15 years old. I was dreaming. I thought it was a dream. And then, unfortunately, fortunate for me, um, it wasn't a dream. It was an OBE. And I had a connection with my aunt. She was Down syndrome, but she also suffered from um, grand mal epileptic seizures.
Mm-hmm.
And I remember I was in a room getting up, and I was shorter than usual, very, very, very much shorter, and walking to from her bed to the doorway, and discovering that as I got there, everything went black and I had the sensation of falling. Next thing you know, I hear my mother pounding on the door saying, Rich, you got to wake up. And I'm like, I couldn't wake up. I heard what she said, but I couldn't move my body. So I was in sleep paralysis. And she said, I got to go. The ambulance is on their way. I got to go. It took me a good 5 minutes. I'm guesstimating 5 for me to actually gain control of my, body. And when I finally was able to, I shook that off, got dressed, ran 5 blocks to where my grandparents lived. And I passed the ambulance on the way, in fact. And when I got there, I found my aunt right where I left her in what I thought was a dream at the doorway of her bedroom. And she basically looked at me, slapped me. And I was like, what the hell? So basically I was inside of her physically, or spiritually, I should say, into her physical body. And I all I can say is that it was an OBE. I had to sneak out of the house because my family was very evangelical, non-denominational Christian. They called everything demonic.
Mm-hmm.
I snuck out of the house, and I tell my mom, "Hey, I got to go to the library. Got lots of testing to do, and I got to study." I was really looking up anything that was ESP or Hans Holzer or Ed and Lorraine Warren. I finally found it in a book called ESP. And it took me about 2 weeks, and it was OBE. I'm like, what is this OB? And I started looking for it, and it was an acronym for out of body experience. And all the symptoms I had was exactly what I had gone through with my aunt 3 weeks prior.
Mm-hmm.
That's what got me started into researching the paranormal and investigating on my own.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I love hearing stories about that, because most people who are in the paranormal do it for several reasons, and it's usually resulting from a personal experience that they've had, and they
Yeah,
try to find the answers for that.
right.
Yep. So, you had mentioned that your family thought everything was demonic. When it comes to demonic cases, it's like almost two sides of the spectrum. Some people think everything's demonic, other people think it's nothing demonic. Is there kind of like a percentage breakdown of how many cases actually turn out to be demon related?
I would say over the years for me, I'd say maybe 7% have been demonic. There's been either an infestation, attachment. Possessions are very, very rare, but it has happened. Uh, but 7% ends up being demonic because, and you have to also realize that the paranormal and demonic have nothing to do with each other.
Mhm.
One is theological when it comes to demonic. The other one is paranormal, which is spiritual, supernatural. Not the only thing they have in common is they're spiritual,
Mhm.
and the way they act, the way they respond. So you have to know the symptoms to look for. And there's also when it involves possible possession, you have to be open to the possibility that there could also be mental illness involved. So you have
Mhm.
to have a psychiatrist, psychologist do a mental evaluation of the individual to eliminate that possibility before going any further, because you could actually cause them to go into a much deeper psychosis if they are mentally ill.
Mhm. Yeah. And what would the differences be between a regular paranormal and something that could be demonic? Like, how would a new team that doesn't know the difference or hasn't experienced the difference be able to identify the signs that they might be in over their head?
An aversion to anything blessed, religious. It doesn't matter if you grab a cross, let's say off the wall, let's say you have a cross that's hanging off there, but it's never been blessed,
Mhm.
and you go in the name of Jesus, Jesus commands you to leave, and it pretty much just grabs that cross and throws it across the room. You ain't, that's not going to do anything.
Mhm.
Now, if you have something blessed, like believe it or not, this is blessed.
Mhm.
This is blessed. My necklaces are blessed. Although I have the Saint Benedict's and also 2 crosses, they're blessed.
Mhm.
I can actually use that, and if there's some kind of aversion, there's something going on. I can even use a coin if I chose to have it blessed
Mhm.
and put that in the hand of someone that may believe to be possessed, and if they react, there's something there. If they
Mhm.
don't react, it's all up here. So
Mhm.
you have to know what to do. There's forms of testing, and that's what demonic or demonologists tend to do.
Mhm. Yeah, all the different little tests without letting them know you're testing them, because you don't want them to, you don't want to be like, here, I'm putting this blessed coin in your hand to see if we get a reaction.
Correct. Like I,
It's-
like I stated earlier, it's a psychological warfare. You have to always be alert as to what's going on and at least 5 to 10 steps ahead of what could potentially be there.
Right, exactly. And when it comes to blessing items, I know I've heard different stories from different people, who actually who has the authority to bless an item.
uh, I'm lucky that I work with Bishop Long. Um, he's blessed everything. Everything you see here, my rings, even the things I use for testing.
Hmm.
There's 2 items that are blessed by him. The others are not, and it's in an effort to throw off whatever
Hmm.
uh, may be there. You have to actually infiltrate the intellect of the human brain to get to what could potentially be there. If there's an aversion to anything that has actually been blessed by a man of God, I'm not saying I'm not a man of God, but I'm not as devoted as Bishop, where this is his calling to life, to be a bishop.
Right.
My calling is to be a demonologist, laity, and there it stops. There it is. There it stops. I could become anything else, but if I were to become a deacon, a priest, and then have the church appoint me to be a bishop, because a church has to appoint you to be a bishop. You can't say I'm a bishop now. That's when you need to be aware of the differences. I'm not saying I can't bless something. I can. But with the authority of the church behind me, the authority of Bishop Long praying for me, giving me, the green light to move forward with it. And that's how I usually test other people that claim to be demonologists or priests or bishop. And I ask them, what's your affiliation to what church and what formal training do you have? They can't answer that question. They're self-proclaimed.
Right. Yeah. And that's something I want to talk about real quick in a minute. But I remembered a question that I had on a show a couple months ago. And the one person wanted to know if it's possible, like if they don't have a church or don't know someone who can bless items for them, is it possible to do them, I guess you would say, virtually?
That's a good question. I've always said intent and faith come into play. But it's best to, if you need something blessed, there is, if you already have the faith, I'm not saying that it's impossible that it could be done virtually, but why not go to a church?
Okay.
And there's always the well. Yeah, I'm sure you know what I'm talking about. The well where the holy water's placed there. Dip it in there or get some. Bless it. Even better, sit in an actual sermon. Wait for the priest at the end and ask the priest to bless whatever it is you brought with you. You don't have to be a member of the church, but if you have that faith, take the time. If you're really dedicated to making sure that whatever you are bringing, I'd rather do it, the right way. I had a situation earlier this year, where I had to go to a church. I had to do photo shoots for the show, and I sat through one of the sermons. I waited, and I asked the priest at the end, "Could you please bless these items for me?" And he said, "Of course, my child," and he blessed them. You know what? I know they're blessed because I know he's a man of God. I know this is his calling and whatnot. And I guess you could say, why not you? Well, I can't perform surgery on myself. I could, but I mean, it'd be very painful. And I'd kind of like, I don't know if I should do that. But
you'd probably pass out really quick.
Yeah, I'd be like, that's not a good thing. But I'd rather have someone that's already called as I am, but called to do more and have it done that way.
Okay. Yep. And then before we get to my one question, just to say hi to a few people watching us. We have Jen, thank you, Jen, for setting this up for me. And Julie has been following me for a while, and we've been friends for a couple of years. So hello, Julie.
Hey, Julie.
And then Gold says,
Gold.
Love you all. And she also says hello to you.
Hi.
And then Julie did say, thank you for explaining that intent is possible. Or is it possible? Yeah.
Yes, definitely.
So thank you, everybody, for watching. And if you do have any questions, feel free to ask us. And one question I did want to ask you is, actually, it's kind of a two-parter, is one, how does one become a demonologist? And two, how do you handle all of these self-proclaimed demonologists, and why, how are they able to proclaim that, hey, I watched an episode of Ghost Hunters and now I'm a demonologist, or, or any other show?
Actually, if it was Ghost Hunters, if it was Ghost Hunters, I'd like to see the episode, because I don't think they've ever featured any. I think John Zaffis was Adventures. Yeah, Ghost Adventures, they're always doing that, but Ghost Hunters, the only time I've ever seen them actually focus on a demonologist, and I know him personally, and he's a good friend of mine, is John Zaffis, when they went ask him about something, and
Mhm.
he showed him around the museum. But that was years ago. That was sci-fi days.
Yeah.
But yeah, there. Okay, so first question was, how do you become a demonologist? It's a calling, and I remember my pastor Frank Marzullo back in the day, and I'm talking. I'm 53. Come Friday, I'll be 54. I was 17 years old, so this had to be around 88, because I was going to turn 18 November 17th. And a few months before, he said, Rich, you've been coming to my church. You have what I feel a discernment of angels, demons, and whatnot. You have this profound understanding of how they work, how they intertwine with humans and whatnot. I would like to start training you in demonology. Now, mind you, I'm 17 years old. Never heard the term demonology or demonologist. And I said, what's that? And he started explaining it to me. And he says, he basically said, I really feel you have a calling for this. And I said, well, okay. And he said, look, take your time, pray about it. And I did for about a week. And I prayed about it, meditated on it. I did research on it. I came back and I said, yes, I would like to. Great. Let's wait until about a week after your 18th birthday, and then we'll start, because that's when you're a legal adult. And let's just say right out of the gate, I'd say 2 weeks in with my training, I witnessed my first demonic possession. And I was like, I don't know if I want to do this. And mind you, I was I was behind at that time. We were meeting in a dance studio, so they had the two-way glass. So they had the office, and I was in the office waiting. And he actually said, "Rich, I need you to wait in here. We have a family that's coming in for deliverance." It wasn't an exorcism, because exorcism, by the way, for those that are not aware, is reserved for the Catholic Church, and deliverances is for everybody else. And he said, we're preparing for deliverance of a young lady. So just sit back, and when we're ready, we'll come here and get you. Well, I couldn't help, I'm 18 years old, of getting up and looking through that two-way mirror, and I see this young couple being led in from the side door in the back with a father. I think it may have been her father, not sure. He never went into detail. They sat her down and they started praying. She was fine. Stood up. Bam. You know how when you fall, you put your hands forward?
Mm-hmm.
She didn't do that. She's just whack, face first. And I was like, oh my God. She must have busted her nose.
Mm-hmm.
Then she arched her back with no help from her hands. And then she plopped down again, started slithering around. And then she slithered back in front of the pastor and the co-pastor who were doing the deliverance. And she arched again, and she started going back and forth like a cobra.
Mm-hmm.
And all I saw was my pastor's back. And you're seeing this. And then she stopped and looked right into my eyes through a two-way mirror that she should not be able to see me, and said, he's next. I was like, and ran back to the couch and opened my Bible. And I was like, for God so loved the world that he gave his only begotten son, that whosoever believeth in him shall not perish but have everlasting life. What's another one? Okay. I was scared. I was really scared. And that was my first actual possession that I experienced. What was the other question? Because it was a two-parter.
Yeah, it's how do you handle self-proclaimed demonologists, and kind of like basically like how
Knowledge.
can you warn people to
Knowledge.
knowledge?
Which is what I'm going to do now. I'll school you on this.
Okay.
So anyone that comes to you and says, "Oh, I'm a demonologist," your questions should be two questions. Oh, that's great. Now, don't do it sarcastically like I'm doing now. Okay, because I don't do it sarcastically. I'm like, I engage, And I say,
Mhm.
oh, that's great. So who mentored you? And it's like, oh, I usually I'd say 9 times out of 10, they're like, oh, no, I read books. I've seen movies and I've seen documentaries and I've seen shows. I'm like, I even had one tell me, I've seen enough of Supernatural to know what to do. For real. I'm not kidding, Heather. This was, I was like, it took everything in me to go, okay. And then the second part, because I can't do anything until Bishop Long actually activates me and states, listen, we have a case in whatever place. Here's the number, the name of the individual. I need you to call them and start, the process. There's a long drawn out process. So you have to have the backing of the church. Without the backing of the church, or the backing or approval of the bishop of that church or the priest, you have nothing. Because before I even go there, before I'm even presented a case and accept that case, I have to seek out his approval, his blessing. And he has to do mass with me before, during, and after. So that being said, I ask him, so what church are you affiliated with? And when they say, I'm not affiliated to any church, I've never been into a church. And I'm like, fascinating. That is how you expose an actual self-proclaimed demonologist. Those are the ones you should run away from. Right. I can prove my qualifications, my certifications and whatnot, my years of experience. But when you have someone that's saying, I watch Supernatural and I don't have a church that I have to answer to, it's like, oh, okay, I get it. Yeah, that's how you do it. So now that you and your listeners have been trained how to, ask that question, how about let me know how that goes.
It'll be interesting because I can think of a few people I have scheduled for next year that I might ask that on air.
Sure. And you know what? Do me a favor. Let me know when you're going to. Okay. And I want to listen in.
Okay, I will. And if you can't listen in at the time, I'll send you the link so you can watch after. So I actually wrote those down so I remember them.
Good.
So what actually is the process once you are given a case from Bishop Long and he says, go for it, start doing everything you need to do? What is the actual process?
Okay, I'll give you the generic process. I can't go into detail as to exactly what I do in testing because that I've been sworn under the church to not divulge. A case will come to Bishop's attention or my attention. Either way, I still have to check with Bishop. The process is I call or we trade back emails. And my question usually is, so what makes you think this is demonic? Because having a background in the paranormal tends to help a lot. We usually psychologically tend to draw from what we fear the most. And if they say, I just know it's demonic because it's doing bad things to me. It's scratching, it's this and that. I'm seeing 3 scratches and I'm like, okay, well, again, I ask what makes you think it's demonic because they're bringing a lot of that information from shows. So I have to ask these questions. I have to ask if there's any drug usage, if there's alcohol abuse, if there's any kind of sexual abuse and things like that. I'm the one that usually gets the slack, but I'm like the pawn on the chessboard that does the crossing before the bishop does the crossing. And I'm usually the first one to get knocked down. So I'm what I've coined over the years, I'm the bad guy. Because oftentimes I have to ask those questions, but I do not to hurt the person, but to educate and also get the information I need in order to place it down in my report before I send it to the church. Because Bishop's going to be the one that's going to be reading through it. I can't decide. Well, Bishop, I don't care that you said no, don't take this case. I'm taking it. Well, guess what? I'm going in, solo, and that in itself is an issue. So I have to ask those questions. If there's been a diagnosis of mental illness, I need to know what type. I'm not saying that people that are mentally ill cannot have demonic attachments, possession, and so on. but that needs to be included into the report because we have to be mindful of it. We then need to have the evaluation available to us, the file. They need to sign a release form given to us. After that is done, I need to include that into the report so I can send to Bishop. And after that, and we've made, some kind of arrangements to where I can actually either go there physically or have someone that's well trained and recognized by the church as a demonologist go do the testing. I start going forward with the testing with the blessing of the church, and if they fail that, and I'm like writing down. I know you can't see my finger, but
yeah,
I'm writing everything down. I'm old school. I pen the paper. Like, and you have to keep a poker face at all times, because if there is something there, which is very rare, but let's say there is, they will try and scare you. There are scare tactics that they will use. During the process of testing, there are things that you have to do in order to gain some kind of response. And yes, there is what is called religious provocation. Religious provocation is something I've been trained to do. Priests and bishops have been trained to do, but I would never recommend anybody in the paranormal to do, because you don't know what you are provoking. But religious provocation is very, very dangerous, because you are leaving yourself open to the possibility of physical attack. That person could be actually used to attack you, or they could actually affect your health. If you have heart problems, if you have asthma, if you have diabetes, God forbid, they will use that. They have the power to actually raise your heart, blood pressure to go up, your asthma, your lungs to close up. I mean, they can do that. And I've been involved in cases where all of a sudden someone that's with me starts getting an attack from some illness they have that has gone with no issues for years. All of a sudden they're having this, and it's like, marking this down, call 911 please, and I have to go forward. And sometimes I myself have been attacked too. So that's usually the process. We have to eliminate mental illness, and then we have to eliminate whether this is mentally induced or something they fear, by going forward with the testing and seeing if they pass or don't pass.
Right. Okay. And I was writing down a question. I completely forgot the other one that I wanted to ask.
Sorry.
No, that's okay. I'm sure it'll come back to me. But I know in the past I have heard several different stories about how sometimes the Catholic Church, for example, denies the existence of spirits. I don't know if you've heard that, or if it's just something people have tossed around in the past. But if that is the case, why do they do that? And why do they do it, especially if they do exorcisms?
Spirits or demons? I need to ask.
Demons, I guess. Yeah.
I don't know why they choose to do that when it's all over the Bible.
Right.
It's Jesus was the first one to actually conduct the first expulsion of demons. Let's call it that, because at that time, exorcism, the exorcist or exorcism word did not exist. He actually cast out legion. It was a legion. So to explain to your audience what a legion is, it's 1,000. There were 1,000 demons in this one man, and he cast out 1,000 demons into a herd of swine, pigs, and they asked to be cast into the swine. What did they do? They ran the swines, who were possessed by them, off a cliff into a lake, and they drowned. They committed suicide to avoid judgment from God. So that was the first exorcism, expulsion, liberation, whatever you want to call it, that ever happened. Now, he did give authority to his disciples that they would go 2 and 2, not 1 and 1, 2 and 2, and that they were allowed to cast out demons and with his authority. And one day, that kind of like grace period had worn off, and one of them were attacked, and they were like, they ran to Jesus going, "What the hell's going on?" And they're like, it was only for a little while. So it's something that people need to remember, that it's been in the Bible. It's all over the Bible. And I wish people would actually pay attention to what the Bible actually speaks of. In fact, in Matthew chapter 12, verse 43, 45, I'll give you an idea. When the unclean spirit is gone out of a man, he walketh through dry places, meaning he's seeking a place to actually, or it is seeking a place to go after it's been cast out. Seeking rest and findeth none, then he saith, I will return into my house from whence I came out, or was cast out. When he is come, he findeth it empty, swept and garnished. Then goeth he and taketh him with himself 7 other spirits, more wicked than himself. I want you to think about that. So it wasn't bad enough that he wasn't wicked alone, but he brings 7 more wicked than it. 7 other spirits more wicked than it, and they enter in and dwell there, and the last state of the man is worse than the first. So when people think that, oh, well, this demon or demons have been cast out, you're good to go, have fun. No, that is actually the most dangerous of times, because that's when not only the one that was cast out or 2 that were cast out will come back with 7 more wicked than they are and try and take over. And I've had situations like that, to where I'm like, what's going on here? And I gotta bring up my formal training and go, oh, that's right. And that's when all hell breaks loose. So believe it or not, that's when it really, what hits the fan.
Right. Yep. And I actually remember my question. When it comes to, I know you had mentioned that there was a difference between demons and being a paranormal investigator.
Yes.
And the one question that I'm actually asked all the time is, can someone who's not religious be affected by a demonic entity? And how do you help them if they don't believe?
The non-religious, believe it or not, are the ones less affected. People like myself, and I don't know you until now. I don't know how religious you are, what faith you have, but I respect all faiths. The ones that are religious are the ones that are attacked the most, because they pose a threat. The ones that have a calling, like I've had and had to realize I had a calling. I've had illnesses, I've had attacks, I've had things break on me that shouldn't be breaking, like my car when I'm supposed to be going to an actual testing, and things like that happening. The ones that are not, I don't want to insult anyone's faith or lack thereof, but the ones that are not really out there, like myself, helping people, helping them out in theological situations, because it's theological, it's not paranormal. Huge difference. And it doesn't matter whether you're Christian, Buddhist, Native American, every single faith has their way of casting out evil spirits of the air, demons, whatever they wish to call them. We have to be mindful of the fact that when you're dealing with something that involves a race, a species that is older than mankind, I want you to think about that. Demons, fallen angels have been around way before man was created. They were there when man was created. They know our weaknesses. They know our strengths. They will, what? You think they're going to be like, yeah, I know about that. Or are they going to use it against us? And they do. And the what makes it even more difficult is they can actually use it without you seeing them use it, because they're spirits. So, that old, where you have the angel talking in one ear, the demon talking in another, it may be subliminal, but it is happening. And that's not possession. That's influence. And you have your guardian angel. I've always said we have I don't want to call it a guardian demon, but there's one always going, hey, stop that. You're trying to make them good. That those impulses, you have to start thinking along the lines of, hey, why did I just randomly think of hurting this person?
Mhm.
That you have to start thinking, where'd that come from? Because if it's a random thought, that you have your answer there.
Right. Yep. Yeah. And since you had talked about how people like you are some of the ones in the front line that are more likely to be attacked, have you ever had to have a deliverance done on you?
Once, yes, and it was unexpected.
Mm-hmm.
Nothing that I hadn't invited it in or anything like that. What had happened was, since it saw me as a threat, it chose to attack me more so because it knew it's not what I am, it's what I bring with me. And it was a case at first that was addressing a curse. It was actually addressed on one of the episodes on a haunting. I think it was season 9 or season 8, and buried. It was called, the episode was called Buried Secrets. What they didn't include in there is that I had a lot of issues after that.
Mm-hmm.
And since it was a curse, and within that curse there was something demonic, it followed me back. In fact, while I was there doing the investigation, the client was next to me, and I started feeling this overwhelming sense of, I can't stand this guy. I want to slap him. I want to hurt him. And I thank God I had my wits about me enough to say, I'm not going to do that. And I excused myself, left my team there, got up, went outside, and I started praying. I started breathing and whatnot. One of my team members, Tammy, came out and she said, "Are you okay?" And I said, "No, I'm not." And I told her what was happening. And she said, put your back against this tree. This looks like the oldest tree. And I want you to think of all that negative energy just leaving your body, going into the root system of this tree. The amount of negative energy I had should have killed that tree right then and there. She said, "Do your prayers while you're doing it." It went away. What I did not do, what I failed to do, was protect myself before we left the case. Because I did go back and we continued with the EVPs and whatnot. I brought it back home. And it attacked. And it started attacking my kids. It attacked my wife. It attacked my dog. May he rest in peace. He passed away this past August. And for a week, I was like, what is going on? I mean, we were all fighting. And I wasn't possessed. I was being influenced. It was like an attachment. And so, in other words, this demon had gone, boom, knocked out the angel on the other side and said, I'm going to take over, and influencing me. So I was fighting with my wife. I was fighting with the kids. I was fighting with my dog. It was just continual chaos. And that's when it occurred to me, wait a minute. This was literally just a day before it became a week. I know what happened. So I brought out some frankincense and myrrh, blessed, started burning it throughout the house and doing certain prayers, and got rid of it. And everything went back to normal. The dog that had been barking, my dog, at the attic door all week long, once I started that, he went bark, bark, stopped, and went to sleep. My dog, my kids who were actually fighting amongst themselves, they were fighting and they stopped, and all the ill feelings left. So yes, you can get taken over. You can be attacked often. So we have a target on us, but the ones that don't believe, the ones that are not aware, they don't bother with that. What would you rather catch if you go fishing? Would you like to catch, a small little fish or a marlin? The marlins are the ones that are faithful. The little fish are the ones that are already in schools doing their thing, and they ain't got to worry about that. They'd rather catch the marlin.
Right. Yep. Okay. Well, Kimberly has a quick question. Welcome to the show, Kimberly. She wants to know what to do if there is an evil spirit haunting her.
Define evil spirit. There's, I believe, human, and there's inhuman. So we could wait in the meantime.
Yep. Hopefully she'll get back to us. So let us know, Kimberly, and we'll make sure we get that question answered. So I don't know if you're able to share anything, but what would be the worst case that you've ever handled?
Ooh, this one happened 16, 17 years ago. I was with the other church at the time working for them, and I've been called to a case in Ocala, Florida by the church to do testing. And I called the husband of the afflicted, his wife was afflicted. And I said, listen, I'm with the church. The name I'm going to give you is not my name, but this is part of the testing. I want you to refer to me as Frank Black. Frank Black is an actual fictitious character from one of the shows that I love and still do to this very day called Millennium. And he said, okay, Frank, no problem. 3 weeks later, I show up and he refers to me as Frank. Now, this was exactly like a scene out of The Exorcist. I drove. This house out in the middle of nowhere. There was corn on one side and I don't know what was on the other side. And it was like the house at the end of this dirt road. And the nearest homes was miles away. So I had a white picket fence. I'm not kidding. I parked outside and I grabbed my briefcase, start walking towards the gate. And I look up to the second floor, and it was the second floor window to the bedroom. And there was a silhouette of what looked to be a woman looking down. And I'm looking up. Now, I wasn't wearing a fedora. It wasn't foggy and it wasn't nighttime. But I was like, is that what's waiting for me? That's kind of creepy, but whatever. And I went in anyways. I answered the door. Mind you, the husband had no idea my name was Rich. For all he knew, my name was really Frank Black. It was my way of testing. And he took me upstairs. He introduced me to his wife. And at the time, she was full on possessed. This was one of those cases. And I said, he introduced me. He said, this is Frank from, I'm not going to name the church either, so-and-so church. And he's here to help us. And the response should be enough to actually creep people out a little bit. And the response was, we know you're not Frank, Rich. And I was like, and mind you, I didn't do that face. I just stayed with my poker face. I'm like, no, my name is Frank. Mind you, I'm lying to a demon. I'm trying to keep it within role. And I said, no, my name is Frank Black. Okay, Rich. So I sat down, opened my briefcase to start taking all my tools out and whatnot. 35 minutes in, I thank her. Mind you, she failed miserably. I should say the demon failed miserably because it was there. And I said, well, thank you so much, so-and-so, for your time. And, I'll leave you in care of your husband from here on out. And she's like, anytime. Thank you, Mr. Valdes. There's my last name. I'm like, where's the Black? Where's the Frank? I don't know. And she was throwing that out. So I was like, oh my God, that freaked me out and I had to keep my composure because, anybody else would have been like, what the hell? Oh, I'm out of here. And jumped out the window. No, I had to be like, okay, my name is not Rich and it's not Valdes. It's Frank Black. But, I had to be like that. And and she was like, see you later, Mr. We will see you later, Mr. Valdes, was exactly their words to me. And I was like, yeah, I'm out. and I went downstairs and the husband's like, so what do you think? I'm like, I'm calling a young and old priest. They should be here like soon because damn, that ain't right. And I later on explained to him outside, away from the house and towards my car, beyond the gate. And I said, look, everything I've seen, and I'm just giving you a heads up. This is definitely possession.
Mhm.
And I haven't written the report yet, but I will be calling. I couldn't even drive back because they did what they were supposed to do, rattle my cage.
Mhm.
And that's exactly what happened. They
Yep.
rattled my cage, and let's just say I didn't leave Ocala that day. I
Mhm.
stopped at some rinky-dink motel, no-tell, spent the night there, and I said, I, I need to stay here because there's no way I can drive back. They rattled my cage. That's what they wanted to do.
Yep.
I never found out what happened with that case because after the clergy takes over or after church takes over, my hands are no longer involved in it. I could ask, but to be honest with you, that was the one that actually did rattle my cage.
Right. So how does it feel to be well known in the demon world?
That's the one world I wish I was not known in. Unfortunately, it is, but that it comes with the territory. It comes with the
Mhm.
calling, and it is what it is. I can't really get
Yeah.
around it as much as I'd love to. You know,
Mhm.
if I was back in heaven and we were trying to decide exactly what our calling was going to be, I would have chosen, I don't know, a fireman,
Mhm.
uh, a gold miner. uh, Something like that, other than being a demonologist.
Mhm.
Anytime.
Yeah. Next time you come around. Courtney wants to know, she said you spoke about having targets on your back. What was the worst you believe and how had that impact your life? Also your faith. Has your faith ever been tested and want to stop doing what you're
Oh
doing? Kind of
yeah,
like what we're talking about now.
yeah. Your faith is daily tested.
Mhm.
You're wondering, should I be doing this? Should I not? Last year alone, I was. This was before we filmed. I had
Mhm.
started having in 2021, late 2021, some really strong pains, and it just came out of nowhere. It was like right here in the my right here in my sternum, and it felt like someone was stabbing me all the way through. I couldn't breathe. I felt like I was going to vomit. Um, Despite all that, I had already signed the contract to do the filming for Eli Roth. Well, at that time, Eli Roth was not involved with the project. It was just the Legion of Exorcists, and I was supposed to go to California to do the filming. And I remember my girlfriend telling me, "Are you sure you want to do this?" I'm like, "When you sign a contract, you have no choice."
Mhm.
So I remember she had to drive me there from, and at that time I was in Utah all the way to California, so it wasn't that bad. It was like a 9.5 hour drive, give or take, and that pain started up while filming.
Mhm.
There's it affected me so negatively that I actually had to question, should I be doing this? And I remember um, that happened. I had to actually be taken to the hospital during filming. I was gone for 2.5 hours. I came back and I said, "All right, I'm ready to go." "Oh, we're wrapping up." I'm like, "You're kidding, right?" Uh, okay. Finish all filming the next few days, and we end up driving back, and all hell broke loose around February. I felt like King Kong was doing this to me.
Mhm.
And I'm thinking to myself, what is this pain? I got rushed to the hospital. Come to find out, I had gallbladder stones. I had 3,
Mhm.
and they were blocking the duct that goes into my pancreas. They had to remove not only the stones but my gallbladder. So I have surgery, and they removed it. I was in there for about 4 days. Then a month later, this pain continued underneath my rib cage on the right side, and it's getting worse progressively. I go to
Mhm.
the hospital. This time I drove myself, and they said, "Mr. Valdez, you're gonna have to stay." I'm like, "Why? What's going on?" You have what's called necrotizing pancreatitis. And for those of you in the medical field that know, and for those of you that don't, that means I had a cyst the size of a Nerf football growing out of my pancreas, and it had surrounded my pancreas, and it was full of I forget the name of it. The name escapes me right now. It's a flesh-eating bacteria, and
Mhm.
if it had left a hole this big in my pancreas, and the pancreas is what gives your insulin and your
Mhm.
hormones and whatnot. And they said, you need to stay, and we need to put a straw in you to drain all that. And that's around the time I also got the word that, oh, we're expecting you back for mid-April for pickup shoots. And I'm like, so I went from, long story short, 220 pounds to 156 pounds between December to April, because I couldn't eat. They wouldn't allow me to eat. They had to put me on food bags and whatnot. E. coli. Thank you, Jen. E. coli is what I had in there in that cyst. So yes, they do attack. And this was happening during the filming, but I was not going to let them win. And let's just say that's one of many. And they're always trying to stop you. But, you know, my faith is stronger than their BS.
Yep. Yeah. I know we had one case where I was going with my partner and he called me saying I needed to pick him up because his engine block cracked in his truck. And then just before I was getting ready to go pick him up, the landlord came knocking on our door saying our water heater was leaking out over our patio and flooding the downstairs area. So we had to wait for the maintenance guy. And then again, as I'm getting ready to leave the door, my son's music school calls me and says that his entire class has been exposed to COVID, because this is when COVID was first starting. So then we had to quarantine because of the possible exposure. And I'm like, something doesn't want us to go to this case.
I'm surprised you're still doing cases during this time, because I know of a lot of teams that actually closed their doors and a lot of other teams that said, nope, not worth it.
Yeah. No, this one lady, we had been working with her for quite a while beforehand. She was 75 years old, actually sent us pictures of what she believed was a demonic haunting her and everything. And it was one of those where, you know, everyone signed releases and agreements that, you know, we understand that we'll be masked up and, you know, saying that she does approve us coming in her home just to cover all bases. But that was the only case that we did. And I ended up not even going just because so much had happened. And it was something didn't want us there.
My kryptonite is frogs. And I had 2 cases that were demonic and frogs that were involved. I had one. I swear to God, I was lounging out by the pool because we were staying for this case for 3 days, 2 nights. And I did this. And a tree frog landed on my armpit. I was like, I jumped up like a schoolgirl saying, burn it off. And the second one was this lady that was being oppressed by something demonic. And she was showing us around the house. And she opened the sliding glass door. And she's like, this is the patio. And in comes this frog this big. I know I'm exaggerating, but it was this big. And it was like, hop. And I was like, oh, hell no. I jumped on top of the kitchen table. I was like, get rid of it, burn it, shoot it. I don't care what you got to do. Where's the flamethrower? Because that's how I knew. Plus everything else that was going on. But yeah, no, frogs, that's my kryptonite.
Yep. Yeah, mine would be spiders. I remember we were investigating an old mine. And
I just killed one right now. That's why I went. By the way, it just came down. I was like,
that's too funny. I'd have been like this the whole time, just waiting for someone to come kill it.
But I'm not afraid of spiders. The only spiders I'm afraid of are brown recluse, because I've seen what they can do.
Yeah. But
I'm sorry, I interrupted you.
Oh no, that's fine. It was so funny because we were down there in the mine investigating, and the mine owner's son was down there with us, and he's like, "Oh, and by the way, there's a lot of spiders down here," and I just froze because we're in pitch darkness.
Were you like this?
I know, yeah. I was like, I don't want to go any further, but I also don't want to go back through what I just went through.
Exactly. Yeah. I'm not big on spiders either, but I mean, if I got like a broom in front of me, I'll be like brushing a lot of stuff down, and I'll be like, I'll go in. I don't care.
Yeah, no. I leave that to my husband, and then my son runs with me.
Oh, you're like, you send someone else in first. Your husband. Oh God, you're so brave.
I know. I mean, we were cleaning out our storage to get our Christmas decorations, and there was the husk of a spider. And we're like, okay, if it's this big, how big is the actual spider now? And we ended up finding 2 in our storage unit. My husband's like throwing boxes, and I'm like on the other end of the storage unit, like, I'm fine over here.
I wanted to say or shout out to Jen Richardson, of course, and Court Peterson. I don't know why she's calling herself Court Peterson, but maybe she has a reason. I'm not going to mess it up. Misty Hunt. Court, by the way. Okay, so Jen is my manager. and producer of the show Greetings from Beyond Radio, my podcast. And Court is also the admin for the page that we both started for Eli Roth Presents the Legion of Exorcists. She's done an amazing job. Actually, that page has a lot more fans than my own fan page. And I'm like, okay, I guess people don't really like me that much. But I actually did it for the team, the whole cast. And I'm happy that it's succeeded. She's done an incredible job. And she's always going to say, it's the fans. I'm like, of course it's the fans, but the fans aren't the ones posting. You are. So take credit. Stop it. It's like, quit it. All right.
Yeah. I've known her for a while, and she's great.
Yeah, she's an incredible person. She calls me Miami. I call her New York, but since I'm in Utah right now, she calls me Utah, and I still call her New York. And I hope she feels better soon.
Yeah, she did have one question, which will be the last question before we start wrapping things up, and where to go. She wanted to know, there it is. Was there ever a case that got too personal for you?
Yes, ironically, the one that was featured on the Legion of Exorcists. That was one of many, but Jen was attacked, and they often do this. If they can't get to you, they will attack the people you love the most around you to get to you. And this was at an undisclosed location. It was an event that we were holding. We had 65 people show up. We had 2 nights of investigating, maybe 2-3 nights. I might be wrong on the number. This happened the second night after someone that self-proclaimed demonologist had been told there was a demon there by 2 actual psychic mediums that I know for a fact actually have the gift. Said, there's a horned figure over here standing 8 feet tall. And he's like, where? Over here? Right here? Hey, buddy, why don't you take me on? And did that. They ran downstairs, told me and Jen about this. And I was like, that ain't cool. I had a word with the individual. I said, don't ever do that again, especially if they're claiming it's something demonic. It was the next day during an investigation that I was conducting that she got taken over because the psychic medium, one of the psychic mediums from the day before, went in, and within 5 minutes she said, too many voices, too many things going on, and screamed and hollered. And I said, just get her out, please get her out. Well, I didn't know that they had taken her to Jen, and then whatever was with her that followed her attacked Jen. What actually attached itself to Jen got taken over after that little investigation. Soon after, she'd never reached for the headsets, by the way, like in the show. The headsets were put on her, and she was, she had the EVP played back for her. And what she heard that the guy couldn't understand, and I'm not going to go into it, was not what it was said in the show, but it was enough for her to put her in a trance state. And that's when she started getting possessed. At that time, it was an attempted possession. So think of it this way. You've put on gloves before. So when you're putting on gloves, you're trying to fit your fingers in. That's what it looked like for her. She was twitching. She was, dazing off. It was really weird. I had to take her out of the courtyard situation. Yeah, that's true. No one could hear it but her, but it was meant for her. And that's when I realized that she was possessed, and I had to actually do a deliverance over her to get rid of it. And guess what? It did come back months later.
Yeah. Yeah, that's the one thing that's scary about this field. And, I like sharing those type of stories so that way new paranormal investigators can see that it's not what you see on TV. No. That there is a real risk to this, as long as you, especially if you're not doing it right.
Yes, and in fact, I wish people would realize that what you see on TV is sensationalized, especially in recreations. But the true story of what really happened is actually scarier than what Hollywood puts its glitz and glamour on. So there's a lot of people out there that know the real story of things that have happened, and they're like, why aren't you making movies? I'm like, because, This
Yep.
is something
Yeah.
very personal, especially for Jen and myself.
Right. Well, I do thank you for coming on today and sharing those stories. It was great chatting with you and getting to know you better.
Thank
I
you.
do have next year, I'll reach out to you because I'll reach out to Jen. We do have a demonology roundtable that we're planning to do on Ghost Education 101 on Wednesday nights.
Okay.
So,
Sounds
and would
good.
love to have you join that. So I will definitely be reaching out. But again, thank you very much for joining us. And thank you everybody for watching. I will make sure I share on my Facebook page where you can find Rich and all of his different Facebook pages that he has. And you can catch us on Exploring the Paranormal Show, or you can watch us on replay on YouTube at Heather Leigh PhD. And then next week, I will be joined by Diet Renee to talk about psychic medium and the work that she has done. And then coming up later this year, we have Chris Allen and Alec Matsuo and CL Thomas joining us. So again, thank you everyone for watching, and thank you, Rich, for joining. It was a pleasure having you here today.
It was a pleasure. Thank you.
Thank you.